Congratulations to Barack Obama, the new President of the United States, President-elect. After a very long, hard, and nasty at sometimes political campaign, he has come out on top. Now, some people have sent me emails asking me, how did I feel about this particular issue? Did I cry and all that? I said, I'll say to you that no, I didn't cry, but I was very surprised to see that people looked at the content of the person running and the quality of his issues versus other divisive things such as Reverend Wright and Mr. Ayers and so-called other affiliations and things, because this is an important election. Again, as I told you, and remember, I was talking about it way before anyone else mentioned it, that you have at least 5 of the next Supreme Court justices going to be over the age of 70. So with 5 of them over 70, and the oldest one, I think, being Justice Stevens at 88 years old, usually they don't retire, or they don't usually tell anybody they're going to retire to the end of the semester for the Supreme Court, which is in June. So I would assume that we probably would have at least 2 people going out at the end of June of 2009. And so therefore, this is a very important election, which the Democrats have won, to be able to replace 2 justices on the Supreme Court. Not only is that important, but as we told you before, the President of the United States also appoints justices on the district courts. So those things are very important, the U.S. district courts or whatever, because a lot of those decisions don't get to beyond them. They don't even get to the Supreme Court. So they're made at that level, whatever. And those are lifetime appointments, those federal judges we're talking about. So again, this is a celebration of a campaign that was historical, not only from the point of view that he was a black man that actually won, but also from the point of view of how the campaign was run. You look at the amount of money that was raised, the amount of money that was spent, the use of the internet and other forms of technology like text messages and things of that nature. So Barack Obama has kind of knocked the political community on his behind, because it's going to be a whole new and different way of going about campaigning. One of the things that I thought was very important, and I think I will discuss this now, is that they didn't give up the South. You know, for years there's been a strategy that we cannot, Democratic parties cannot win the South, that they would have to find a way to to get the bigger cities, the bigger states or whatever. And when they lost one of those states, like for example in Ohio, or they lost one of those, or Missouri or something, then they couldn't win because the South was always a lock for the Republican Party. So give credit to Howard Dean, who actually started the revolution online, fundraising. Also telling people within the Democratic Party that we just can't concede the southern states, that we have to go out and compete for those particular states. And if we are competitive, we have a message that's on tune with the people, a message that reaches them at their core level, that the Democrats can compete. The Southern strategy was developed underneath Richard Nixon. And the reason why that developed was because a lot of the Southerners left the Democratic Party and became Republicans because of the Civil Rights Bill of 1965, from my understanding. So they've been in the fold for 40-something years since then. So this is a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous victory when you have 76% of Americans are predominantly white, and 24% of minorities, black, Hispanic, Asian, and whatever, Indian, and whatever mixes we have in this country. So again, a lot of people are reading things into this particular victory. I think that's very interesting. I heard William Bennett, former Secretary of Education, Republican, saying that now this really indicates that there will be no excuses for black people. And I thought about that. I said, no excuses for black people in what sense do you mean? Because they have elected one president, it doesn't eliminate racism, it doesn't eliminate economic injustice, political injustice. These things still exist. And so therefore, because you don't understand what those racism is, institutionalized racism is what we're talking about, It's very difficult for one man to come in and change that. But if you ask me if people have hope, then I would say to you, yes, 100%. People do have hope. USA Today had a poll that they did this past Friday. They did a poll, and they asked a number of people how many people were optimistic. 69% said they were optimistic. Okay. They asked how many people were enthusiastic, and 59% said they were enthusiastic. Then they asked how many people were pessimistic, and they said 30% were pessimistic. But the thing that I found very interesting about the particular poll was 27% of the people said they were afraid. 27% of the people said they were afraid. Now that's very interesting, and that goes back to some type of psychological issue dealing with Barack Obama, because I can't see what they could be afraid of. Yes, he's the first black president. There are some things that we don't know about him, but but the world has celebrated him. The world has embraced him. The world has looked forward to his taking over the presidency, because they look for a new breath of fresh air in the political and economic relationships that they have with the United States. And so I think that's very important. But you know, you have some Americans, like I said before, that are afraid. And I remember going back to an article that was in the Daily News pertaining to a woman who went to school with Senator Robert Byrd from Virginia. And this woman is 87 years old. And she had made a statement that, you know, if Barack Obama wins, then there'll be no stopping black people. You know, black people, there will be no stopping them. We won't be able to stop them at all. And so it goes back to inherent fear. And we talked about this before, and maybe some people say to me, you shouldn't raise this, but it almost goes back to the issue of Nat Turner and Nat Turner Society, or syndrome, excuse me. So we have those people that have this Nat Turner syndrome, that I like to call it, that is based on the historical fear of blacks, you know, based on what the images of black people are, and not necessarily based on their personal experiences, but what is